Hi, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayegh, and on this podcast, we're going to talk about some deep stuff. I'm here to tell you that you're amazing, and often, the only person who can't see that is you. No matter who you are, what you do, or where you're from, there's greatness in you. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayegh, and welcome to the Transformation Starts Today podcast, where I interview leaders, champions, and high performers from all walks of life as they share their story, the lessons they've learned along the way, and empowering perspectives to help you create an extraordinary life without regret. Today's guest is Dr. Mark Sherwood, naturopathic doctor, best-selling author, and one of the original biohackers before biohacking was cool. Alongside his wife, Dr. Michele Sherwood, he co-founded the Functional Medical Institute, helping people reverse chronic disease and get off unnecessary medications. A former SWAT officer, bodybuilding champion, professional athlete, and national media voice in health, Dr. Sherwood blends science and real-world experience in a way that challenges everything you think you know about healing and longevity. Dr. Sherwood, it's such an honor to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jamil. It's my pleasure and honor to be with you today, man.
Thank you. For our listeners, Dr. Sherwood and I just met a few moments ago, and just in the minutes leading up to hitting the record button, I've already gotten such a sense of who he is as a man, and just his presence is so genuine. And so thank you again for being here, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I was looking forward to this for the last couple of months, actually.
Yeah. And so for our listeners who don't know you yet, they haven't heard your story, could you please share with us who you are, what led you to where you are today, what inspired you to do this work that you do?
Of course. Prior to this, as you alluded to, I was a police officer, and we're going back now 30 years. But I was a police officer for 24 years, 10 of which was on the SWAT team. And during that career, you're going to see a lot, do a lot, and experience a lot. And I did. And as my time went on in my career as police work, I was eventually charged, Jamil, with developing a wellness program. Now we're going back to the late 90s, early 2000s at this time frame. And during that course of time, there wasn't a wellness program. And I surmised and theorized that officer safety and officer wellness probably went hand in hand. So I started doing my research, and there was really not a template or model to follow. So it was just figure it out, Mark, and let me see what you got. And so as I got into it, there was one statistic that I found out that at that time was 50 years old. And it was a statistic, Jamil, that mentioned the average 20-year service male police officer lives to 66 years of age. And I began to run the numbers in Oklahoma and Tulsa specifically at that same time, 50 years later, and I realized it didn't change. And that moment in time shifted my heart, and my heart sank because I thought these men and women are serving their community. Though not perfect, they're serving their community every single day, and they're not really getting to enjoy retirement. And then I watched colleague after colleague retire and die. I began to see this pattern real time happening. And I went on a mission to find out why. And so the development of the wellness program had more of a life of its own. I wanted to figure out why people were dying and why people were hurting. And that kind of led me to the idea that the things that were affecting the police officer was not just affecting them, but it was beginning to affect the world. And it was going to affect the world more because I saw stress, I saw late nights, I saw poor eating, I saw poor lifestyle habits, all those things we talk about. And so I went on a mission to figure out not just why, but what I could do about it and how I can make an impact. So, kind of like that movie Forrest Gump, he kept on running, I kept on studying.
Yeah.
And that led me to, pursue academics and in a variety of places and things. Anything that I get my hands on, I just was all over it. And then eventually, about actually a few months after I'd officially retired, I met my wife. And my wife Dr. Michelle is an osteopathic doctor, but she was in a situation where she had gotten fired from traditional medicine because too many people were getting too well. So that's a story all in itself. And so we met, and it was really a love at first sight relationship. So we began to pursue our studies together at that point, more so in the area of longevity, what we could do about natural remedies to help get people off medications. And that led to the birth of the Functional Medical Institute, and it just kind of took a life of its own. And we didn't really have anybody in those moments in time to seek out as role models or mentors. We didn't really know. We just knew that something needed to change. And we went on there to figure out why. And it's been a whirlwind of learning, lessons learned, lessons earned, I suppose. And now, even today, I said to someone, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. So just enjoy that process of trying to help people, Jamil.
Mm. I love the answer, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing that. And a couple of things that came to mind when you said everything you shared. First thing, the idea of there was no template, there was no model. And I love that because you said, we figured it out.
Yep.
And what I wrote down is like, trailblazer. And it's the idea of right now we have listeners who you're looking at your world right now, and there's something that you may want to do, but in your family, in your community, in your culture, maybe there doesn't seem to be a template for the path that you're considering walking down because, as far as you know, no one around you has done that. But that doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It might, but it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. And it doesn't mean you can't do it. But it does mean that you might need to be the one who sets the
Yep.
precedent for other people. I forgot the full story, but it's some idea of like if you went to like a trail, like a hike or something,
Yep.
there's the trails that are well paved and they're already kind of crafted where people have walked that path before and you know where that path goes, and there's not really any surprises necessarily. But if you go off the path and there is no trail, you might find some things that might be really rewarding. And the thing is, you have to also accept the fact that it might be difficult and challenging, and there's things you're going to have to do that you wouldn't have to do otherwise. And then you mentioned, there you are on your journey. You hear about this 66-year-old kind of life expectancy, let's say. You see a problem, and the idea is like you saw a problem and you did something about it.
Yeah.
And, very often that's how some of the best businesses start, where people sit there and say, I just noticed that there was a problem that people were dealing with and nobody was solving it. Or I was dealing with the problem and I was really irritated and annoyed that it had to be this way. So I just got creative and I used ingenuity and I figured it out. And then there's billion-dollar companies that have gotten creative because somebody was struggling with the problem themselves
Yep.
and they didn't want to anymore. And I love the word that you used repeatedly, your mission. And I think that a commonality that I can tell that you and I have, I use the following word in a positive way because it's not always used that way. There's an obsession. For me, my life's obsession is mastery. And
Mm.
mastery is something that to me is a mountain with no top. It's a never-ending experience. There's never a point where you quote unquote arrive. There's one of my favorite quotes is the master has mastered the art of being a student forever.
That's
Now,
great. I love
right?
that.
So the master who thinks, like the student thinks there's a point where you graduate and you stop learning because you know it all. The master, there's a story that sums this up for me beautifully. I forgot the style of martial arts, but there was a martial artist. The guy was like a founder of one of these big martial arts. So let's just imagine, could be off on the number. It's like an eighth degree black belt or whatever he is. And he's revered by everybody who does this type of the style of martial art. And he was on his deathbed and he requested to be buried in his white belt. And he said, I want to go into the next life as a beginner.
Oh man.
and
Wow.
and other people it's like they think, and my understanding, which again could be off about this, that in Japan, maybe like more old school, you have a white belt, but that's the belt you have the entire time. And the reason why somebody's belt is a black belt is because it's been used for so long that it gets dirty and now it looks black, which means they have a lot of experience versus it's just a different color fabric. And so again, I heard that years ago. And so even if it's assuming it's true, but even if it's not, you get the essence of it. That
Mhm.
if we can say my obsession is to dive as fully into the thing that matters most to me as possible. And if I can use that obsession in a way that positively impacts the lives of others, like my obsession started on the health side of things before it branched out into relationship work and coaching and mentorship and healing work and an energy side. I was 14 years old and I was learning about health for me because I was
Yeah.
getting sick all the time and I wanted to get healthy. And so when we get obsessed, it's like that whole idea of you never work a day in your life, it
Yep.
became this effortless excitement of I wanted to grow, learn, read, watch, listen, learn from, hire, and
Yep.
get the best help I could possibly get. And that just things took off and it snowballed in a really beautiful way. So I can feel that passion that you have for the obsession and the learning. And then that last thing that I want to comment on, the idea of one thing leads to the next. We didn't know whatever it was that the path was going to lead to. But there's a Martin Luther King Jr. quote that I've always resonated with. I've shared it on the podcast probably countless times. You don't need to see the whole staircase, just take the next step in faith.
Hmm.
And if you know that, okay, here's where I'm at right now, and from your current vantage point, you can only see what's right in front of you. You don't necessarily see what's around the corner, but you can know at least the right direction. Like you're going to get called. Either you'll be crystal clear, or maybe it's just a hunch, or maybe there's a feeling that I think that's the direction, or, that's kind of interesting, or that's exciting, or I'm curious about that. That's worth exploring. Any of those is a reason to walk in that direction. And as
Yes.
you begin to take that step, the next step reveals itself. And there's a Steve Jobs quote at his Stanford commencement speech where he said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do it backwards. When you look back, you see how one thing led to the next and led to the next. And in your example, then you met your wife, and then this happened, and then that happened,
Yep.
and you've got this journey. And going forward, you have to have, in Steve Jobs' words, faith in something. It could be a higher power, it could be yourself, but whatever it is, there's a faith that the dots will connect. And your job is make the present moment as beautiful as possible. Because if you can make the best decisions now, the present moment, as I tell my clients often, is the present moment is always pregnant with the next moment.
Hmm.
So if you make this moment as beautiful as possible, it gives birth to that next moment. If this moment is, really crappy by your own estimation, and you think the next moment's going to be better, but you keep the attitude and you keep the lack of action and you keep all that, that's birthing the next moment, using health as a context. If you don't have the health that you want and you hope that one day you will, but you don't do anything differently now, it just stays a dream. But if you
Yes.
actually execute on it now, things change. And so all that, just wanted to share that based on what you said.
That's great. I just want to follow up and affirm that mission statement. You're right about you're never going to have it figured out. And that's the key thing. And I think that's what is infectious to people that want to learn. They
Yeah.
they they keep on looking and seeking, and that's the beauty of science. It's the beauty of reason. It's the beauty of wisdom, because when you think you got it figured out, you still try to poke holes in what you think you know, and what you have left over is what you think you know right now, which is not concrete. It's always evolutionary. It's always, it's just that thing, and that's been one thing that's driven me, and obviously you, many many years.
Yeah. You're reminding me of a mentor of mine. He's a neurosurgeon. He's spectacular at what he does. And he's got this practice that he does that I think is extraordinary. Every year before like the new year starts, he makes a list. Essentially, what's everything I believe?
Hmm.
And then he tries to disprove everything he believes.
Love
And
that.
he's like, he questions everything he believes because he wants to make sure, is it actually true before I bring it into the new year? Is
Yep.
it actually accurate? And I forgot who said the following quote. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's something like, we question like the beliefs in our life, except for the beliefs we hold closest to us, those we never think to question. But the thing is, those are the ones that keep you stuck.
That's
And so if we're willing, whoever's listening, whatever your career is, whatever your interests are, whatever it is you want to step into doing, whatever you believe about the areas of life that are important to you, often we think we see the whole picture when we're really only seeing one perspective. We're seeing like if it's a diamond, you think you see the whole diamond, you just see one facet. And so if you're only looking at one side of it, it's easy to come to a conclusion and think you've got it figured out. But like you said, the Socrates kind of idea, if I know anything, is that I know nothing, or
That's
that
exactly
the
right.
more I know, the more I know I don't know. Because A, nobody knows everything, of course, but B, I think it's a dangerous place to be when you think you have it all figured out because you stop learning and you also start to miss maybe some nuance that's present. And you might have it figured out in very specific situations within a certain context. But in the moment, like from a medical perspective, let's say a patient comes in, you might know, okay, if a patient comes in with these parameters of history and symptoms and whatever, this might be the right approach. But the moment those parameters change, that approach may not work anymore. And so
Right.
we think, oh, that symptom, that condition, this is the treatment. Not always. And that's how we get in trouble.
Very good point, because if we start presuming things or assuming things, well, we know what that statement results in.
Yeah. Quick side note about that. I just find this funny. I don't mind saying it. So it's like the whole thing, you make an ass out of you and me. I like to say, you make an ass out of you, leave me out of it.
That's great. I'm going to use that one sometimes.
And, And so, given like the bio that I got to share with our listeners, I think when I got to read your bio, I thought it's fascinating with your background, with the SWAT team, the police work, the professional sports, the motivational speaking. I think it's a really unique journey. And I'd love to ask, how has that shaped the way you relate to your patients and how you help them break through any limiting beliefs they have around health?
Well, I think two parts of that. Number one is I have been through a lot. I have experienced a lot. So I don't come at in a situation, whether it be a conversation like this or conversation with anyone, from the standpoint that I haven't been through hard times. I haven't seen bad things. I haven't experienced good or bad people who have the worst day of their life or make the worst decision of their life. I've seen people die. I've seen them live. I've seen things in front of me that no man, no woman should ever see. And you can't take that out of your mind. You can't take it out of your psyche. You can't take it out of your primal brain. Those images are still there. That sometimes they get buried and
Yeah.
they'll show up sometimes. And so, from a perspective of experience, I believe there's a relatability or reality, maybe an authenticity about that. I think people really, really like. And then I think from that, in experiences of life, you learn how to communicate in a way that people understand. And to me, it's been very important, Jamil, to communicate in story form to people. So even when I'm communicating high level biochemical processes or physiological or pathophysiological concepts, I want to communicate the story, because if I try to communicate like I'm too smart, I've communicated nothing. I haven't really spoke on them on a level. So that's resulted in, storytelling, analogous with maybe parable stories during the course of interactions. And we've done that through books, we've done that through films, and it's really resulted in a way to communicate a message that actually has some sticking power, I think, or learning power. Because we all remember as children or even as adults stories. We can all tell a story, tell me a story. And we kind of taken that, both my wife and I, and tried to exemplify that in all aspects.
Mm. Yeah, you remind me of, I may have one or two of these words off, but the concepts it'll land. Einstein has 5 levels of genius, I believe, or 5 levels of intelligence. 5 levels of intelligence, starting from least intelligent, smart, intelligent, brilliant, genius, simple.
Yeah.
And it's what you just talked about, that if we're communicating with people in such a way because we're trying to look impressive or trying to look good, if they do not know what we just said, then you wasted both of your time. And it's like whatever you were trying to communicate did not land. And I think that's why that idea of if you can't explain something simply, you don't know it well enough. Because like there's a great video series. I think I've seen it on YouTube or Instagram or something, where they'll take it's like quantum physics or something, and they'll say there's this expert, and they'll put him in a room with like a 6-year-old, and they'll say explain it to them at a first grade level, and they'll do it. And then they'll say, here's someone in high school, explain it to them. And then here's somebody in college, here's a PhD, etc. And you see them how they break it down so simply in the beginning, but by the end of the video, 20 minutes later or so, you see they really know their stuff and they're going technical. But you don't do that if someone's not going to get it.
Oh. No, and it's true. Like when in our mission of creating perhaps an increase in health span,
Yeah,
decreasing sick span, whatever that looks like, we want to do that. Whether that gives us more longevity or not, that's not the main focus. It's increasing health span, which
yeah,
may increase longevity. But when you're trying to communicate those principles to someone, you've got to find the least common denominator so that they can adopt those principles in a way that they can communicate that to their friends as well. Because everybody that I talk to, I mean, this is the truth. Every single person I talk to, I'm thinking to myself, how can I teach them how to become a teacher?
yes,
Because I realize they're going to touch people in their lives that I will never meet, that will never step foot in my presence, I'll never speak with. But I realize the closeness of the world is even we're talking, how I was connected with you. The most amazing thing is we're probably one away right now with the communication we have of everyone in the world,
yeah,
which is shocking to me to say. It blows my mind, but and it goes back to what you said earlier about embracing the present moment. Don't waste it. Today, being the present is a gift, and we really need to embrace the idea of that and make the most out of them. And on in this situation, like our conversation, we obviously know we're fully engaged in this moment, not thinking about anything other than trying to say the right thing and do the right thing and communicate with kindness and love and clarity to motivate and inspire people. And it matters. And if every single person listening would embrace that idea with every single conversation, every single moment, every single interaction, I mean, what could happen not just to our health, but to the world?
absolutely. For our listeners, imagine if the next person you engaged with for 2 seconds or for 3 hours, whatever the time frame is, if they left your presence feeling deeply cared for,
Hmm.
loved, if they felt like they mattered, if they felt like they were important, if they felt like you genuinely cared, what might that do for them? And what might the ripple impact or the ripple effect of that be? And now let's imagine you did that with every person you came into contact with, because even if you spent 10 seconds with somebody, so for example, if I meet somebody and then let's say the person's name is John and the person's wife is Lindsay, and I don't meet Lindsay, but I meet John, and John tells me about his wife Lindsay, and then I don't see John for like 3 weeks. And then I happen to run into John. And last time he said Lindsay was a little bit sick. That's why she wasn't at the event. And I happen to remember that.
Yeah.
So then I walk up and I go, John, it's so good to see you. How have you been? Is Lindsay feeling better? He's looking at me going, first of all, hold on. I kind of remember you, but you remember my wife and you remember that she was sick. And then maybe 30 seconds, we just connect at a deep level. And when I walk away, he goes, wow. And it wasn't a gimmick. Like, I genuinely want to know, is she okay? And if you can show up with that space, like be in your heart and connect with people, it's absolutely incredible how your presence becomes medicine.
It's refreshing to hear you describe that because in our business model, it's all about relationships and caring. And we've instructed, trained the staff that, and we have, again, clients everywhere, whether it be live, in person, or remote. But we've taught them to, when you interact with them, to take notes from the last encounter and follow up the first question based upon what they thought was important the last time.
Yeah,
How's your dog?
yeah,
How's your wife? How was your holiday season? How was that? Didn't you change jobs? How's your new job?
yeah,
And that is exactly what you said. People feel like they're cared for. They feel like they're heard. And I support 1,000% what you just said about healing. Healing occurs when you have the presence of listening ears and hearts.
yeah,
And I've seen that so many times where people walk themselves right into the answer. If you just use your two ears to listen and use your one mouth to not miss a good opportunity to shut up, I guess.
yeah. Something you said earlier about teaching, you know, one of the naturopathic principles for our listeners is called docere. And docere is a Latin word. It means doctor as teacher. And it's the idea that the doctor's job, in one respect, is to educate the person so that they know how to care for themselves, so that they can bring that level of health into their own life, but they can also share it with others. And so if we can embody that, it's anyone, even if you're not a formal doctor with a degree or something like that, you can be a teacher, you can share wisdom, you can help others leave them better than you found them. And so I wanted to share that part. And then I also wanted to give you the opportunity, if you can please share for yourself and for our, no, share for our audience your distinction between health span and longevity.
So when I look at longevity, it's classically designed and understood, I suppose, as how many years you live,
Yeah,
right? And we know the more years you live, the more we say we have longevity.
yeah,
But that is quite different than health span. Health span is the number of years you live where you're healthy, where you're not infirm, you're mobile, you do what you want, when you want, how you want, and you don't hurt. You're
yes,
able to have a freedom of making your own decisions in life and not having to have somebody care for you all the time. You're not on multiple medications. You have generally good health. You make good decisions. You're aware of where you are, and you have the ability to communicate presently and lovingly in all relationships.
mm,
You can travel if you want to. You can move if you want to. You can exercise. You know what you're eating. You know what you're doing. To me, that's health span.
yeah,
All of that, and I want to see an increase in that.
yeah,
Now I know, I'm sure the listeners know that by following those principles, you increase the chances or quite likelihood that longevity would be extended.
yeah,
But life itself is unpredictable. It's like a 3D acid trip, not knowing where you're going to go some days. But ultimately, really, if our mission is about increasing health span, we're also decreasing something, which is called sick span. And in today's world, we're seeing the opposite. No one is thinking about sick span, health span, but they're talking about lifespan and sometimes longevity. And I think we need to distinctively make a difference between all of those and really shift our focus, our mission, if you will, and our treatment protocols, our mindset, our decisions that we make more into the minds or more into the idea of increasing that idea of health span.
yeah. It's well said. I think that there is this interesting aspect of, let's say, the way human beings think about and relate to outcomes versus process.
Yeah.
So longevity is an outcome.
Mhm.
And I could also say having a certain amount of money is an outcome. Having a certain type of relationship is an outcome. A certain type of health is an outcome, like a fitness goal or something like that. And most of us will say, well, I want that. And we focus on the goal, we focus on the outcome. But the thing is, like you said, focusing on longevity, if that's like I want to live to 113, I want to live whatever your number is. If that's like the goal, could be great. But the thing is, if that's the goal and that's the focus, it could lend itself to a certain amount of worry or stress or something else because life can be uncertain. And what if it doesn't happen and all these kind of things? Versus if I were to say longevity is a side effect or a consequence of doing as much of the right things as possible, doing less of the wrong things or less of the ones that are more detrimental to you, let's say, probably a better way of putting it. And that coupled with some good fortune, probably. And when you mix all that together, you have a higher likelihood of having longevity.
Yeah.
But if just like if somebody says, I want more money, well, it's like, great. But if what is money? Money is basically coming to you as an exchange of value for a good or a service or whatever you're providing. And if you focus on service and you focus on providing that to the right people, the amount of people, whatever it is, the money shows up as a consequence in a
Yeah.
similar kind of way. What can you do? I said earlier, I believe I said it on the podcast. It's all blending together. I've had a lot of conversations today. The present moment is always pregnant with the next moment.
Yep.
And so this idea that what can I do right now to increase my health span? What can I do right now to make this moment more jovial, lighter, more fun, more playful, more, let's say, peaceful? more connection with animals, human beings, like whatever it is, more mission driven, purpose filled, spiritual connection, whatever it is. But if you just did that, your blood pressure is going to be better, your anxiety is going to be less, your stress is going to be lower, you're going to have more of the anti-inflammatory chemicals flooding through your system. Everything's going to work better. But there's almost no concern about a future that hasn't happened. It's all about making right now more beautiful. And I think that that way of living, the future is great to have a plan, but often we live there in our head and we're letting the present moment pass by.
I really like the way you said that. Very well explained. And I've said many times it here, and even in dealing with people, you've got to become a master of the processes. Knowing the processes, at least what you know right now, are the processes that add up to the best results that are mostly predictable.
Yeah.
Just do that, and it can change because the what we think we know is always changing.
Yeah.
If we really pay attention to it, because you can get stuck in old ways that might not allow you to achieve your best, or you can be looking for new ways so hard you forget the best ways right now. And so it is really about those processes. And I believe that, doing the right things by making those decisions in all the areas you discussed on a daily basis, does equate for better results.
Yeah.
Whether it means we live longer or not, I think because we make better decisions, we have more cognitive skills of being aware where we are, and our health is typically better.
Yeah. And given your background, all the different things we've talked about, what role would you say discipline plays in somebody having the best health span they could have?
I think discipline is right at the top, because discipline is something that just does not have an effect, Jamil, on whether or not you are consistent at doing things. It's bigger than that. And what I mean by that is discipline is something that you're experiencing that you do. It's something you have, but it communicates something in two directions. It's bi-directional. One, it communicates to you, and it's called trustworthiness. I
Mm,
don't lie to myself.
yeah.
And that trustworthiness leads to faithfulness. And the faithfulness leads to predictability. And when you got the discipline and truthfulness and faithfulness and predictability, you've got dependability. And so you become dependable in the journey that you're on, and it gives you confidence that you and you know what you're going to do. And the more you do that, it is momentum. Discipline creates momentum. It really does, because you don't, as we know, our brain gets wired in certain ways. You repeat those behaviors, and their neurological wiring begins to hardwire more. And the more of the wires that are fired together, the stronger the connection becomes. And so we do the things over and over again. But the second way that communicates is to everybody that's watching you, which goes back to one of the things I really believe, that you are an example, whether you really want to be or not, because somebody's always watching you, whether you don't know them or do know them, whether you have a relationship with them or don't. They watch what you do more than what you say. And the best messages I've ever heard, I will say, are not the ones spoken, probably what I've seen. And so I think that the discipline communicates so deeply. And that's one of the things that is really important to me, because I want to exhibit discipline to myself and my wife and on the people that I get a chance to be around.
Yeah. You triggered something for me that's, I think, really powerful for people to hear. It's an old expression. People in your life can either serve as examples or warnings.
Mm,
And the idea is then which are you being for those around you? And when we can think of it like that, it can be a wake-up call. And and you mentioned people who they learn more essentially based on what they see you do than what you say, and that's no truer than with for children. It's like little kids will look at you and it's not do as I say, they do as you do.
yes.
And when they see you act a certain way, they're more likely to, exhibit that behavior. Back in the day, there were so many doctors that there'd be commercials for doctors all about what cigarette do they smoke.
Right.
It's like your doctor smokes Camel. What do you smoke? And that was the whole thing. And the tobacco industry had like kind of the everything's safe and it's fine and it's great, and all the doctors are smoking. Or you have a lot of doctors that are, it's not a judgment, it's more of an observation. If a doctor is significantly ill and they're not in health, there is something to be said. Again, it's not a judgment, but there is something to be said about you were a professional bodybuilder. And so it's like if I want to work with somebody and my intention is I want to be a professional bodybuilder,
Yeah.
I may do well to hire someone like you who's done it before, and I can tell you're still in shape. But if somebody is not doing that, it doesn't mean they don't have the knowledge. They could be brilliant at what they do, but at least I would prefer to work with a doctor who themselves they have a level of vitality that I aspire for. They walk their talk, they practice what they preach, and they're not telling me one thing and doing something else.
That has been something that my wife and I have heard time and time again,
Yeah,
knowing full well we're not perfect, but when
sure.
people leave and perceive that you are doing the things that are what you're teaching, they appreciate that and they recognize that and they honor that. And it is infectious because people want that. I've even talked to the staff that I have, if you are going to represent my wife and I can't be with you 24/7, 365. I just want you to be aware that you represent something bigger than yourselves.
Yes.
And they honor that. And we have had, as you know, health is something that's, especially in America, is not very good. It's really not. And we've had many staff members that have not had the best health practices. But and this happened just today. Um, a lady that we have working for us has been in the past diagnosed with heart failure. And we're like, okay, I want you to stop embracing that diagnosis right now. That was point number one. Do not own that. And, goes back to the cardiologist and just today comes in, the pro BNP was 17, just very, very low and minuscule. And the doctor said, I don't know what happened, but your heart's working great. Keep up the good work. I'm really proud of you. And she was happy. And our admonition to her is now own this, that your heart is working great, because she now knows that what she represented, what she saw, perhaps in us and other people like yourself, she saw something that she wanted to emulate and did it, and it worked out well, and they got better.
Yeah. Something that you shared before about when we, let's say, take that responsibility for ourselves with the discipline and say, trustworthiness gets created, faithfulness gets created, a word that really resonates with me that I often share with people is such a foundational pillar to creating any result that you want is integrity.
Yeah,
And it's integrity with others, but it's also integrity with yourself. And like you said, if we're breaking our quote unquote promises to ourselves, I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to start that next week. This is really important to me. But we're not actually backing it up with action. Whether we're conscious of it or not, we're training ourselves to not take our words seriously.
yeah,
And
that's true.
yeah, and so to, the example you shared, you speak to your staff and it's like, hey, we love that you're here and you represent the greater picture. You represent the family, you represent the community here.
100%.
And we need the touch points with our people to be as magnificent as possible. And, I've had people tell me that they called some business and the practitioner was incredible, but the front desk person who answered the phone was so horrible that they never went back to that person. And you sit there and you go, here's that practitioner who's fantastic, great heart, an excellent skill, wisdom, knowledge, etc. And they don't know that they just lost the ability to help somebody and they just lost business and they just lost referrals and whatever else because their front desk person gave attitude to the person who they spoke to on the phone. And
Yep.
so with that in mind, though, the part of the beauty of integrity, like you said, it's not about being perfect. Part of the beauty of integrity is one of the most in integrity things you can do is to own and honor when you're out of integrity. And when you can own where you're out of integrity, then you can do something about it.
Love it.
And it's once 1% more, 10% more, just start to shift
Yeah.
more into integrity as much as you know how to be. And if there's people around you, in your situation as an example, people that may be in the office or people that are part of the team that can serve as mirrors, hey, I think I'm more in integrity now. Can you just give me a confirmation? Am I missing something? Is there a blind spot?
Mhm.
But yeah, when we're in integrity, that level of faithfulness that builds in our own ability to follow through, I think is spectacular. And so I wanted to just ask you, in your experience, what do you find are the biggest needle moving, let's say, pieces of the puzzle from a health span perspective that support people in healing? And what are the things that really get in the way? Could be physical, emotional, mental, etc.
Well, I think there's a principle overriding theme that we need to consider is the idea of keeping things simple. Because I think you mentioned that in that hierarchical
Yeah.
structure of brilliance,
Yeah.
um, keeping things so simple that it's so hard to fail is the key principle that I want to get across. When I look at health, I sort of break it down, the very things that everybody can do and start right now that are going to provide beneficial results. I go right to the area of number one would be choose one meal today that's going to be good, no processed foods. Hold the grains and bread, the soy, the corn, the sugars, the processed mess. Maybe have a salad with a piece of meat on it. Maybe have an egg omelet or something like that. Just have one meal today. Start with one that you know is right, and you can build from there. Then
Yeah.
I go to the physical point. I say, put your tennis shoes on and walk around the block, walk down the street and back. I didn't say walk 5 miles, just make a consistent pattern of moving maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. The third thing I always tell people to do is to use 1 minute out of the day, one out of the 1,440. 1 minute, 60 seconds to just sit there and be quiet. No dogs, no TV, no media, no husband, no wife, nothing. Just be quiet. Don't say a word. Sometimes it's as easy as watching the second hand go around on your watch. And when you close your system off like that and calm it down, that does a miracle for your nervous system. So it's like one meal, one walk, 1 minute. And most people can understand that one meal, one walk, 1 minute. Yeah, that's what Mark said. And by doing those things, people are going, well, okay, one meal, one walk, 1 minute. I might have just spent a total of 15 minutes. That doesn't take very long. And that is true. But it doesn't take long before those small little habits become monumental journeys because the small habits, small steps have to happen before the big runs happen. And so that's where people mess up. They have this idea that they have to get it all back today. They have this perpetual belief in shame of past mistakes. They uh, believe they can't get better. And so I try to find that little pathway, those little steps that, the vast majority of all people on planet Earth can do. And by doing that, I can guarantee you, with no hesitation at all, that there's benefits to those things. And time again, that's where we started with people. And they increased those habits until they started to not just walk better, but they started to run. I'm talking about running the race of life properly.
Yeah. I love that. And two things that stand out. So the idea of greatness is a series of small things done well over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people think about the big things and the small things, what they often don't recognize is there's no such thing as big and small things. These are relative terms that we just throw out. But the thing is, what is a big thing? A big thing is a series of small things that like come together. And so what's the result? A series of actions taken that lead to an outcome. And so, like you said, if we think, oh, I want to work out, but I don't have time to go to the gym 6 hours a week,
Hmm.
you could go for a walk. You could go on the floor right now and do some push-ups or some sit-ups, or you can just do some body squats, or you can just raise your legs and do like high knees. You can do some step-ups. You don't have to go anywhere. Like right now, we're sitting down. We could just stand up for a second and then sit back down. There's all of these things that can be done, and we often, without meaning to, we talk ourselves out of it because, well, I don't have the time to, and we think it's this big thing. And I
Hmm.
love how you said it, like keep it small, keep it tiny. There's all these books like Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits, Small,
Yeah.
whatever these books are called. It's all like the same idea. Smallest unit of like measured effort. Keep it real simple where it's like if somebody said to me, I want to start doing push-ups, I want to work out. And I say, sounds good. So what do you want to do? And they say, I'm going to do 500 push-ups a day. And then I say, are you currently doing push-ups? And they go, no. And I say, when's the last time you did push-ups? And they go, 25 years ago. And what ends up happening is if they actually pull it off, they're going to get injured within like a few days.
Yes.
They're not going to want to do it ever again. But if I were to say, I've got something even more effective, would you be open to that? And they go, yeah, they're leaning in, they're all ears. And I go, I want you to do one push-up every day for the next 3 weeks, and then we'll talk. And they go, one push-up, but I could do way more. I know you can. Just do one, and anything extra is up to you. What happens is when you just do one, and one was the goal, the moment you do one, mission accomplished, you succeeded. So there's a positive association now built up. But of course, you're like, I can do more than one. So you'll do like five or you'll do eight and you'll feel good about yourself and you get momentum. And then tomorrow you do one again, but you did eight yesterday. So you're like, I'm gonna do 10 today.
Hmm.
And the next thing you know, it's been 3 weeks. And in theory, you've done 21 push-ups, but you've probably done hundreds.
Yeah.
But you feel really good about it. But what I was trying to do is I'm trying to shift your identity to I am somebody that does push-ups every day. Not I'm somebody that tries to do 500 at once because then you burn out and it's not going to be successful. So there's that part of rather than try to, like you said, like bite it all off in one bite, small bites,
Yes.
better digestion. And then the other thing of, you said you talked about look at the watch and watch the second hand.
Yeah.
And what was so beautiful, what came up to me when you said that was somebody might say something like, what difference could 1 minute make?
Hmm.
And if I looked at my watch, go, and I start just watching that second hand, and I did nothing else, no thinking, no talking, just stare at it. After at some 30 seconds or so, you'll sit there and go, a minute is a long time.
Yeah.
Like try to do a plank for a minute.
Okay. Right.
People start to feel it. Just do a dead hang for a minute. Do pull-ups and go for a minute and see what happens. And it's like if we can sit there and go, 1 minute is actually a lot more meaningful than I thought it was. Now imagine you have 1 minute with the person at the grocery store and you can make a difference in their life. You have 1 minute with that Uber driver right before you get out of the car. You've got 1 minute with your spouse before they step out to go to work. You have 1 minute when you drop your kid off to school and they're about to get out. And in 1 minute, you can make them feel like the most loved, cherished, and cared for person in the world. Or you can make them feel like, hey, I gotta go. Take care. And it's
Hmm.
not that you're doing it personally. It's not like an intentional thing, rather, but it's like it's a lack of intention that is going into how you really want this person to feel as a result of their presence with you. And so that 1 minute, I can make the next minute very meaningful based on my choices. There's a Dr. Mark Hyman quote, something like, every time you put food in your mouth, you're either feeding health or you're feeding disease.
True.
And again, it's not meant to be a perfection thing, but like, in a big picture, yeah, it's true. So if we come from that space of, but every time I interact with people, I'm either enhancing our communication or taking away from it. I'm either enhancing our intimacy. I like breaking that down into me, see,
Hmm.
see into me.
Exactly.
I'm being with you. So like man to man, girl to girl, soul to soul, like we're coming together. And in that moment, I see you. And
Yeah.
when I see you, there's a felt depth and there's a presence, and people open up and they'll say, I just feel good when I'm around you. Or I never told anybody that before. Or thank you so much for such a great experience. Like, quick story. When I was in medical school, there was a friend of mine. He was going through a lot, and I invited him over to my apartment. And I remember, he sits down on the couch, and I had the whole night, and I wanted to just be there for him because he was really going through like a lot of things fell apart in his world at the same time.
Mm.
And so I said to him, I'll make up a name, Doug. And I said, so Doug, tell me what's been going on. And he starts talking. And he goes maybe for 20 minutes straight.
Wow.
And I'm just with him, nodding my head. I'm just there. I'm listening, full presence. And then he stops and he looks at me. And I just look at him and I'm silent and I'm nodding. And then he starts again. And he goes another 20 minutes, deeper than the first round. And I'm listening and I'm nodding. And I'm like, wow. And I'm taking it in and I'm really listening and I'm there. And then he's tearing up and then he keeps going and then he stops. And he's like tearing up and then he looks at me and I look at him and I nod. And then he goes again for like 20 minutes. That went on for like 3 hours. The
Wow.
only thing I ever said was, tell me what's going on. And at the end of the 3 hours, he looked at me. He was laughing. He had the biggest smile on his face and he said, what an incredible conversation. Like, thank you so much for this. And it's like, it didn't occur to him. I didn't say anything, but it's the idea that I did say something. I just didn't use words. I spoke with my heart. I spoke with my eyes. I spoke with my presence. I spoke in my body language. But the idea was what was communicated. I'm here for you. I see you. I love you. Feel free to share anything. There's no judgment here. And it's like all of that gets communicated just with your presence. That's why I said earlier, your presence can be medicine. I said you can be an example, you can be a warning. And the moment you're aware of it is the moment you can go, how can I be more of an example today? How can I be more medicine today? How can I be the glue that holds the most important, let's say, people in my life together? How can I be the person that is the one who's positively representing the business or the team or the family? Like, how can I take pride in the product? Or, one of my mentors said this beautiful like line. He said, you want to know what marketing is? And he goes, not marketing. He goes, you want to know what your brand is? Your brand is the feeling people have after you walk out of the room.
Mm.
Because
Great.
some people walk out of the room and you go, thank God they're gone. And other people walk out of the room and you feel a little bit sad and you go, oh, like party's over. Or, oh, like, I'm gonna miss that person. Or, oh, there's that. And so it's like, what do people miss when you're not there anymore? That's your brand. That's your business's brand. That's your personal brand. That's your logo. And it's like when you can embrace that, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you have a part of a team, whether you're the business owner, whether it's a family thing, you can apply that to everything.
Yeah, that is excellent. I haven't heard that before, but with your permission, I'll repeat that one. That's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely, man.
Great.
Something in your bio that I brought up, and then you shared it earlier about biohacking. And I
Yeah.
know biohacking has been a term that's been around for a while. Some people are familiar with this, some people may not be. And I know it evolves as we know more about best practices, how things work. Can you share for you, what is biohacking? What does that mean in 2026? And how has your perspective changed over the years as it relates to longevity, health span, things of that nature, as it relates to biohacking?
Well, biohacking might take on the concept. You go back to those video games. You try to figure out a hack to win, right? So
Sure.
we all knew those video hacks we used to have. But biohacking, if you get right down to it, the best definition that I probably ever used is something like this. It's taking everything you know about biology, biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, common sense, emotional principles, spiritual principles, life experience, exercise, eating right, nutrition, supplementation, hormones, peptides, genetics, and what you learn tomorrow, and putting that all together on a daily basis to try to figure out the best practices, processes, and protocols to not just for you, but for everybody to have a better life experience and a better health span.
Yeah.
There's no real clear definition of that. It is basically taking everything you know about everything and trying to put it together on a day by day basis, trying new things. Again, as you mentioned, the path analogy, looking in new directions, knowing it might not be right, not knowing what you might find. But the more times you do that, the more you look, the more you find. And I think that that's the way I describe this idea of biohacking. And it's really at a decibel level today, which makes me kind of happy because people are starting to have the idea of maybe I can do more. They're starting to take ownership of health versus delegate it away. And I think that's all constructive.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, we've spoken about a few different things here as it relates to, let's say, the discipline, the simplicity, like the 1 minute, the one this, the one meal, the it was a 1 minute, 10-minute walk, something like that.
1 minute, one meal, one walk.
One walk, that's it, yeah. And so in a similar way, what have you found to be some of the biggest either misconceptions, let's say, about eating healthy, healthy living, something that maybe you hear people say to you, Doc, man, I'm doing this, it's great. In your head, you're like, I don't know if it's actually as good as you think it is. Anything like that stand out?
Yeah, the concept of dieting is a general rule. There's so many diets today that purport to be the right diet.
Yeah.
And I like to look at the word diet in a funny manner. It's DIET. You take the T off, what does it leave you with? The word die. And that's kind of what you feel like when you're going to diet. Plus, diet is always focusing on what to avoid. It
Yes.
always brings a highlight of what you shouldn't do. It's about almost like a concept of deprivation, if you
Mhm.
get right down to it. At least psychologically, it can be. And I'm about the opposite. I'm about abundance. I think we got plenty of food, plenty of options for good food, plenty of choices available
Yeah.
for mankind today, especially in this country. I really, really do believe that. You just got to know where to look. You know what you're looking for, and you got to be settled in what you're looking for. I think the greatest misconception that I've heard recently is, I want picking on things. I'm just using this as an example, like carnivore diet, for example. And I'm like, you know, I get the idea you may be going into ketosis. I get the idea you may be losing a little fat. I get all that. But are you considering that you may become nutrient deficient? And are you considering maybe that there's some beneficial phytonutrients in plants you probably could use? Have you been tested? Have you tested micronutrients? Have you had a good blood test? Have you looked at your body composition? Are you gaining muscle? Are you losing fat? Or are you just losing weight? You could lose fat, you could lose muscle, and you could lose health. So it's like those things like that, frankly, Jamil, kind of freak me out because I'm like, the purported health experts out here, most of them, if people really get down to it, are not in the trenches with people. They're not seeing people, they're not interacting with people. They're selling something. And fine, free market system, awesome. But the personalized experience that you have communicates a story. And what I've seen specifically with diet is you really do better as a general overall statement of experience and practical observation when you just train and teach somebody what real food is. You give them the permission to eat as much as they want. You tell them and teach them how to hear the voice of full. And you teach them that food doesn't become their master. Food is a source of nutrients that the body has to have in order to run its processes. And if they get all of that, there's a freedom that occurs there. And I think that the food element today is so significant
Yeah.
and so disease causing or healing. And again, we have the option to pick.
Yeah, as it relates to food, something I can bring into the conversation. Often, if I'm speaking with somebody and nutrition comes on board in the conversation, somebody may say something like, is this food healthy? And I'll share something that many people haven't considered. And so maybe our listeners, maybe this might be a new thing for you. There is no such thing as healthy food. There is food, And it
Mm.
may or may not be healthy for you in your situation, in your unique body situation, like all these kind of things, because what's healthy for one person causes an autoimmune flare in somebody else. And
Bingo.
so when you sit there and say, not you, but like when one sits there and says, is this healthy? That's where we get thrown off because then it makes it seem like there's one diet or there's one food for
That's right.
everybody. It depends a lot on where you live, light cycles, latitude in the world. For example, if somebody's an Eskimo and they live in the middle of it of Canada and it's February and you try to put them on a vegan diet, they
Good
get
luck.
sick. But if somebody then is in the equator area and they're mostly eating fruit and like plants and things of that nature, they can pull that off. You try to do that in Norway, you get sick. If you like it is because it's not, it matters where you are in the world. It matters based on many different factors. But if we can come from that space and say, rather than what's healthy, what's not, it's in my unique situation, like you said, given my body's needs. Maybe I get blood tested and I find out maybe I'm deficient in certain things. Maybe I have a genetic mutation, like an MTHFR or something, so I don't methylate things as well. So now it's coming from the space of given my unique needs, this is healthy for me, at least at this stage of my life, but that might change. And on the one hand, someone could say that makes things a little bit more complicated. Yes, but it is more accurate. And if it's more accurate, it's going to lead you in the right direction ultimately, as long as we're willing to make space for that nuance. What's healthy for you might not be healthy for your partner. And it's not necessarily it could be more nuanced in the sense that let me word this right. It's not saying what you're having for dinner is going to like kill your partner. It's not that. But it is saying that there are certain things that you might do really well with, and that doesn't mean go tell everybody else to eat the same thing because
Right.
it doesn't mean they're going to go and get great benefit. They might actually be harmed by it. And like you said, there's people who are considered influencers, people who are getting a lot of followership, and hopefully they mean really well. And sometimes they put out really excellent information, but
Yes.
sometimes they put out things that aren't actually true, or it's more nuanced than they're making it seem. And then everybody rolls with it. And so, for example, something like saunas and cold plunges. For many people, saunas can be excellent.
Yes.
There's certain times where saunas can be dangerous. There are certain people, cold plunges can be incredible. There are certain people and certain body types and constitutions and things like that where cold plunges can be actually detrimental to your hormonal health and things of that nature. And so it's not like, what's the newest biohack thing? And let me go try all of it. There's very few things I think that most people could do most of the time and be great with. It's very unique. And I think that personalized, individualized approach is ultimately, even though it's more complicated, it is going to lead to the best results, I think, all of the time.
I agree. And we've done the same thing that you just talked about with exercise. That's another classic example of people trying to mimic or do certain type of exercise because it works for one person. And again, that's body type, age, health status, the whole bit, goals, nutritional status, everything's there, with that. And then it's funny you mentioned cold plunge and sauna. We just had this discussion last weekend. Um, I use cold plunge and sauna, but I always give cautions every single time with instructions because it's not for everybody. And then there's timing and things like that you just can't do. I mean, and so I tell people, all the time, it's not about copying Dr. Michelle and I. It's about taking the information and seeing how it can be best utilized to enhance the outcomes. And that means you have to factor in all those things from a personal standpoint, what that means, what that is. And I'm so glad you pointed that out because it's so important.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that came to mind is, whether it's fasting or intermittent fasting,
Mm,
when I was in my 20s and I first got exposed to the concept of intermittent fasting, I was like, oh, I'm going to try that. And my understanding, at least, so you have men and you have women, and we have different hormonal cycles. And so women
no,
go through this 28 to 30 or so day cycle, give or take. Men, though, it's kind of like a 24-hour thing. And so men can do the same thing every day and be less impacted. But if a
yeah,
woman tries to fast when she's on her period, that's going to be pretty detrimental. If she's going to try to cold plunge and do all these things, vigorous exercise, that's a mistake. It's going to lead to harm. And this idea that, oh, like fasting's good for you. Well, for whom, in what situation, in what time, for how long? Like all these kind of things, you know?
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people that clientele that we attract, obviously, like creates like a lot of times, but a lot of people get into this biohacking space and they do see all these different devices, gadgets, processes, protocols, and things, and they want to do them all. And I'm going to have to like take them apart one at a time and analyze each for their own specific needs.
Yeah.
And usually that's a good encouraging back and forth process of learning. But I've watched people before that buy every gadget like that and have everything in their house and not they waste money, they hurt themselves, they get more unhealthy, and it becomes very frustrating to them. So I always tell people to guard against that because it can happen pretty easy.
Yeah. One of the things I love about what you just said for our listeners to really be with, I want to acknowledge and I love the desire to get well.
Yeah,
Right? And so somebody's out there, they're buying all the stuff, they're trying the different biohacks, they're trying all the things that people talk about that are health practices, and maybe they're just trying either too many of them at once or they're too intense with it or whatever it might be. The intention is great. I remember when I met, I am engaged currently, and when my fiance and I were dating, she had mentioned she's a clinical psychologist, and so she had said to me, "There's a difference between intention and impact." And
yeah,
I had not heard it worded that way. I had a different way of saying that. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's fascinating. Of course, you can be well intended, but there could be a negative outcome. There could be a negative impact to yourself or somebody else. And just because you meant well doesn't mean, there's no apology necessary or something like that. So, in a
right.
similar way, I love it when people are trying so many things and they really want to get well. And my hope is that they can both take the acknowledgement of, my heart's in the right place, my intention's in the right place, like I'm doing good, and there's some tweaks that we can make here to make this work better for you, to
Mm.
make this safer. You'll save money, and it also would lead to a better outcome and probably wouldn't be frustrating.
Definitely, definitely. You have to sometimes even tone people back or rein them in, say, just hold off before you do that. Let's do this first.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And so as we begin to wrap up our conversation, Mark, if someone listened to this conversation that we're having and they changed just one thing related to their health, what would you hope that shift would be?
One thing I would say the belief system's got to change. Self-talk. I
Hmm.
mean, if we continually say, I can never get healthy, I can never get well, I never sleep well, I can't eat well, I can't do that, that becomes prophetic. And I
Hmm.
believe it's Henry Ford that said, if you say you can or can't, you're right.
Hmm.
And that is true. So if people begin to, and it could be as simple as a positive daily affirmative statement pattern that can help with that. But we got to change our belief system around to really get out of what we're doing because what we're doing is not working. And we are in the most unhealthy state right now on planet Earth than I believe any time in history right now. And I think we can believe better and do better, but it goes back to the original, what we embrace right here to be possible.
Yeah, well said. And something that goes with that, like you said, as a whole, we're in the most unhealthy state, and we have the most opportunity to turn it around.
We do.
And it's like, right now, the level of access that most of us have, just the fact that you can pick up your phone right now, like if you're listening to this podcast, whether it's on video on YouTube or it's on one of the audio platforms, maybe you're out on a walk, maybe you're home on your computer, whatever you're doing, maybe you're driving, like whatever you're doing, there's something that you could either look up right now that could make your health better. There's something you can do right now that could be an action that's different. Like Mark said, you can go for one walk. You can do this one thing for 1 minute, whatever, one meal. How can I make a better decision right now? And so hypothetically, let's say you're driving, you've been listening to our conversation, but you're thinking about, I'm hungry. Maybe I want to go get some food. So as you're driving, you hear this conversation and you were thinking about going to get some food that probably isn't that good for you, but you were craving it for some reason. And let's say you decide as a result of this conversation, if I really wanted to nourish my body, love my body, respect my body, whatever word you want to use, what might be a meal that I could get right now that would fit those criteria? And you might go, well, I could go there. And then let's say you go there and now you eat this meal that was better for you. And then you feel lighter tonight. You go to sleep better. You don't have as many aches and pains, maybe less inflammation. Your life just got positively impacted by an action that you took as a result of this conversation. And then you do that one step at a time. I was telling two different people earlier today, a 1% improvement every day compounds. And at the end of a year, you're 37 times, better. And so if you say, could I be 1% healthier today? 1% more than yesterday, just like can I do one push-up? It's like, of course. Can I walk for 1 minute? Can I walk for one step? It's not about the one in a way. It's about the compounding of the one. And so if you can just make today 1% healthier than it was yesterday, you'll be 37 times healthier by the end of the year. Starting today is day one. And it's an absolutely extraordinary thing. And so what is exciting you that you're working on or working towards now, Mark?
We've got a new book actually
Yeah.
that should be coming out sometime in the late spring of 2026.
Mhm.
So it's called Authentic Longevity.
Beautiful.
And my wife and I co-authored it. We poured our heart and soul into this in every single area that we've talked about and more. There are 14 chapters in it. Um, we will come up with a companion certified authentic longevity educator course with 14 modules. And so the idea behind this is a legacy book, Jamil, where this might be first edition. And as we learn more, we'll go back and modify it. But that's coming up. Pretty excited about that. And another thing that's kind of fun is we just produced another movie. It's called Forgotten Fortune, and it will be coming out sometime in 2026 as well. So it is a story that features Lou Ferrigno, Jimmy Walker, well-named uh, Hollywood personalities, and it's really about the story about a family dealing with an Alzheimer's dementia patient. And so it's very touching, very gripping, very inspiring, funny moments in it, and also heartfelt moments in it. So it's one of those stories we want to provide introspection and communicate a little love.
I love that. Congratulations on both of those and moving those forward. That's one of the things we said earlier about one step at a time.
Yeah.
You know, it builds and builds, and it's like the compounding interest kind of thing where it may not look like much in the beginning, and then it just takes off in a similar way, to create a movie, a film, to write a book. How do you write a book? One word at a time, one page at a time, And it sounds daunting for many in the beginning. You want me to write a book? Like, that's a lot. But could you write a little sentence right now? Could you write a paragraph? Because you just do enough of those and you have a book. And it can be really extraordinary. So with that in mind, how can our listeners best connect with you, learn more about you, work with you and your wife? Anything you want to share?
People can go. First of all, I want to thank you, Jamil. This has been a great conversation. So I'm really grateful for that, grateful for what you're doing, very appreciative. But people can reach out and catch me on my personal website, drmarksherwood.com, drmarksherwood.com. Super easy. People want to connect with our clinic. There's a little drop down tab for that. There's all kinds of things we do and a lot of free things people can pick up on, free tips. And hey, my advice for people is connect and take the free stuff, man. It'll help you out.
Absolutely. And I want to just first of all, thank you. I received your acknowledgement and thank you again for everything you shared, your presence. One of the things that I want to acknowledge you for is I feel that over the years, I've developed, it's not like I was born with it, I developed a very strong sense of kind of reading people, feeling people. And I love the way that you talk about your patients, your mission, your work, your life. And it's just like you are the real deal. And it's beautiful to see. And I'm sure everyone who has the privilege of working with you and your wife, they are in good hands.
Very kind of you. That as touches my heart and grateful for that.
Thank you. And so for our listeners, first of all, thank you for taking the time, the energy, the attention to be here with us today. I don't take that lightly at all. I know there's a lot of other things you could be listening to and doing. I hope that our conversation today brought up even one idea, one insight, one applicable thing that you could take and make your life better. If this resonated, first of all, please share this with at least one person. Like we talked about health span, let's raise the health span of the planet. How do we do that? One person at a time. There may be someone that you know that maybe they got diagnosed with something, or maybe they just don't have the health that they would like, or maybe their health is pretty good and they want to keep optimizing it. There's no wrong person to share this kind of conversation with. If they have a body, they can benefit from this. And then beyond that, if you can please leave a review. Could be Apple, it could be Spotify, it could be a YouTube comment. Wherever it is you're tuning into this, helps more people see it. And when something's got higher ratings or something has a couple more comments, people look at it and they go, I'll give that a chance. And you never know, that could be the thing that changes everything for them. So thank you very much. It goes a long way and I appreciate the support. Any closing statements, Mark, that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, I'm grateful. I hope that people do the same thing. I echo what you said, second that motion, as they say. Share this, listen to this, and help some people.
Beautiful. I call the show Transformation Starts Today. And I call it that because I find that most people's favorite day to change their life is tomorrow. And that's why they stay stuck. But you can be different. You can apply what you learned here today. You can listen to it more than once. You can teach other people, maybe something that you heard here, to really lock it into yourself. And then you can make today 1% better. 1% better. Focus on the one. Everything changes from there. All my love to you and your family. Take care. I look forward to the next time we get to connect. Thank you for being with us today. If this conversation served you, it would mean a lot if you left a review and shared this with anyone who may benefit. An extraordinary life without regret is available to you now. Choose it. It's your time.